Ex-husband invited his Barren, ex-wife to his second wedding to mock her until her twins walked in. She thought the past was behind her until an invitation forced her to face the man who broke her heart. Secrets, betrayal, and dangerous choices await. Can love survive when everything is at stake? Hey, beautiful souls. I am your storyteller, James, and welcome to Mr. James' family, the place where every story touches your heart and stirs your emotions. I am so happy you're here today, because what I'm about to share will take you on a journey filled with love, heartbreak, betrayal, and the power of redemption. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to send out a soulful prayer. May your hearts be filled with courage to face life's challenges. May hope always find its way into your darkest moments. And may love and kindness guide every step you take. May your family be safe, your dreams be protected, and your spirit remain strong and unshakable. If you love stories that move your soul and leave you thinking long after they end, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Mr. James Family, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a journey of love, emotion, and inspiration. Stay with us till the very last chapter. I promise you it will be unforgettable. Now, my beautiful souls, let's begin this story. The morning air felt unusually cold against Riley's cheeks as she stepped out of the clinic. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady the tremor she didn't want anyone to see. Therapy always left her drained, but today it left her unsettled in a different way. Because Landon Hayes, her ex-husband, the man who once shattered her confidence like a dropped glass, had shown something she never expected. Remorse. Not arrogance, not excuses, not that polished mask he wore for the world, but real, trembling, stripped-down remorse. She replayed the moment over and over, the way his eyes softened when he looked at the twins, the way his fingers shook as if he was afraid to touch a life he once threw away. He never touched them recklessly. He never even raised his voice. He just watched them with a mixture of awe and grief, like someone seeing daylight after years in a tunnel. Riley didn't forgive him. God, forgiveness wasn't that easy, but something in her chest loosened. Not fondness, not nostalgia, just a quiet understanding that he was no longer the man who walked away from her, crying on the kitchen floor 5 years ago. She inhaled deeply, letting the sun warm her face. It felt like the first real breath she had taken all morning. She needed silence, clarity. Her heart had been a battlefield for too long, and she wasn't ready to let anyone step inside again. But life never waited for her healing. A shadow stretched across the sidewalk, long and confident. She looked up, and her breath caught for a very different reason. Adrian Wells. Tall, caramel-skinned, effortlessly elegant in a navy suit that looked hand-stitched for him. Hazel eyes that softened the moment they met hers. Shoulders broad enough to carry a company, a city, maybe even someone's broken world. He was the opposite of Landon in every possible way. Warm where Landon was controlled, gentle where Landon was sharp, steady where Landon had been a storm. Adrian smiled, the kind that made strangers feel safe. "Riley," he greeted, voice low and warm. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad moment." Her pulse fluttered. "No, just leaving my session." He nodded respectfully, never pushing, never prying. "I heard through the board that the center needs a permanent design lead," he said. "And after seeing your work—" He paused, looking at her like he saw more than she allowed anyone else to see. "I couldn't think of anyone more deserving." Riley blinked. She had dreamed of opportunities like this, had worked late nights sketching ideas after putting the twins to bed, had doubted herself more times than she admitted. "You're offering me the lead position?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Adrian's smile deepened. "Not just that." He took one step closer, not too close, not invasive, just present. We're opening a full expansion in New York, a massive project, a real platform, and I want you to head it. Your art, your design, your vision. New York. The word struck her like a spark in a dark room. A new world, a fresh chapter, a life where she could rewrite everything, her career, her dreams, her story. A life where Landon wasn't a shadow in every corner, a life where she wasn't the woman he broke. A life where the twins could grow in a place untainted by old whispers and cruel memories. Her throat tightened. New York is huge, she murmured. Adrian softened. So are you. The compliment hit her deeper than she expected. Riley lowered her gaze, trying to steady the whirlwind inside her chest. She imagined the twins running through a bigger apartment, attending better schools, exploring museums, seeing skyscrapers scrape the clouds. She imagined building a life without constantly measuring her steps against a painful past. She imagined breathing freely. Adrian watched her quietly, patiently, never rushing her decision. You don't have to answer now, he said gently. Take your time. Talk to the twins. Think about what you want. You've spent too many years thinking about everyone else. For a moment, she saw a future she hadn't believed she deserved, a new beginning, a clean horizon, a life built from hope rather than hurt. Her lips parted to speak. She didn't even know what she was going to say, but then something inside her shifted, an invisible pull, a sudden heaviness, because she felt someone watching. Riley turned. Across the sidewalk, just a few feet away, stood Landon. Still, silent, frozen. His blue eyes, once cold, once proud, were wide with something rawer than pain. He looked like he'd been punched, like he couldn't breathe, like he'd just watched something precious slip through his fingers. He must have heard everything, every word, every possibility, every dream she never shared with him. The sunlight caught the edge of his face, revealing a paleness she hadn't seen even during the therapy session. His jaw clenched, not with anger, but fear, fear so stark it wiped the arrogance clean off him. For a moment, no one moved. Not Adrian, not Riley, not Landon. The world shrank into a single, trembling line of tension between them. Riley's heart hammered painfully. Landon took one unsteady step toward her. Then another. His voice cracked, barely a whisper, but enough to shatter the morning calm. "You're leaving," Landon whispered, his voice breaking. "With my children." The moment Landon whispered those words, "You're leaving. With my children," Riley felt an old bruise inside her pulse awake. She didn't answer, not because she owed him silence, but because she owed herself the space to breathe. The past had taken enough of her oxygen. She stepped back, her heartbeat steady yet guarded, and Adrian instinctively shifted beside her. He didn't interrupt. He didn't crowd. He simply stayed near, like a quiet shield made of patience rather than pressure. Riley felt the difference. She felt seen, not cornered. "Riley, we should go inside," Adrian said softly. His voice didn't carry demands, just an invitation. A respectful, outstretched hand she didn't have to take unless she wanted to. Riley nodded and walked with him, refusing to look back at the broken expression on Landon's face. That was a battlefield she wasn't ready to step onto again. Inside the center, brightness washed over her. Children laughed from the art room. Walls stayed alive with color and creation. It felt like the place her heart had been begging for, a place where her scars didn't define her. Adrian guided her through the newly renovated spaces, explaining future plans, asking for her thoughts, valuing her perspective like it was gold. He paused every time she spoke, his attention never drifting. The contrast to her old life tightened something in her chest. In the art studio, the twins rushed up to Adrian with paint-stained hands. He crouched down instantly, listening to their excited chatter, holding their little masterpieces like they were priceless treasures. They tugged him toward their easels, and he followed without hesitation, letting them lead. Riley watched quietly. Adrian wasn't performing. He wasn't pretending. This was who he was, a man who cared without needing applause. For the first time in years, she felt her shoulders unclench. She joined them, brushing her fingers through her daughter's curls, admiring the chaos of color on their canvases. Adrian stepped back, watching her with a gentle smile. "You're brilliant with them," he said. Riley blinked, surprised. "With who? The kids?" "With everyone," he replied. "You bring warmth into any room. New York needs that. I need that." Her chest tightened at the sincerity in his tone. The hours passed like a warm breeze instead of a storm. Adrian showed her the office he hoped would be hers, spacious, sunlit, filled with potential. He spoke about growth, creativity, leadership. He spoke about her future like it was inevitable, not something she had to apologize for wanting. For once, Riley allowed herself to imagine it. A new city, a new job, a new beginning where she wasn't someone's regret, someone's mistake, someone's discarded chapter. But outside, life wasn't done, reminding her that the past wasn't sealed away. Landon sat in his car across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles paled. He watched Adrian hold the twins' hands as they crossed the street together. Watched Riley smile at Adrian's jokes. Watched a life forming that didn't include him. He felt something he hated, helplessness. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar contracts, ruled boardrooms with iron certainty. But he couldn't control this. He couldn't control the fact that the woman he broke was learning how to breathe without him. He couldn't control the truth gnawing at him. He deserved the pain. His eyes burned as the twins skipped beside Adrian, unaware of the war inside their father's chest. A war of regret, longing, and fear that this time, apologies wouldn't be enough. That night, Riley put the twins to bed and sank onto her couch, exhaustion mixing with questions she wasn't ready to answer. The apartment felt too quiet, too aware of her heartbeat. Her phone buzzed. An email. From Landon. Just one single line. "If you move across the country, please don't take them without letting me try." Riley swallowed hard. The words were soft, but the weight behind them wasn't. It felt like he had finally lowered all his armor, finally spoken without hiding behind ego or anger. But she couldn't let one sentence rewrite years of hurt. She closed the email, her fingers trembling. Before her thoughts could settle, her phone vibrated again. A message from Adrian. "I need to tell you something about Landon before you decide." Her breath caught, her world once again tilted. Adrian's next message appears on her screen. "It's about something he did, something you never knew." Riley arrived at the center just after sunrise, the air still cool, the sky barely awake. Adrian was already waiting for her near the entrance, his posture too still, too tense for this early hour. The moment she saw his expression, something inside her tightened. He didn't greet her with his usual soft smile. He didn't comment on the morning or ask about the twins. He simply stepped closer, lowering his voice like the walls themselves might be listening. "There's something off," he murmured, "and you need to hear it from me before it gets worse." Riley felt her pulse shift. "What happened?" Adrian exhaled slowly, his jaw clenched with frustration. "Your ex, Landon. He's being targeted. Someone is trying to destroy him completely. Not just his company, not just his reputation. They want to break everything connected to him." Her breath caught. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you and the twins are part of that world," he said. "And they're watching you too." A chill slid down her spine. She wrapped her arms around herself instinctively, grounding her body even as her mind spun. Who is it? Who would go this far? Adrian hesitated, a hesitation that felt too heavy to be casual. He looked away, then back at her, gathering the courage to say the name. Brooke. The air seemed to shift around Riley. Her stomach dropped as if the ground had vanished beneath her. Brooke, of course. The woman who stood at the reunion with a smile sharper than glass. The woman who had watched her future crumble in front of an entire hall of witnesses. The woman Landon had chosen after breaking Riley, only to publicly lose her when the truth came out. Riley whispered, "I didn't think she'd go this far." "She's connected," Adrian said. "Very connected. Her family has influence, and she's pulling strings. She's been feeding information to people who want Landon out of the picture. And she's blaming you for everything she lost." Riley's hands began to tremble, the fear unfamiliar and unwelcome. She had lived through heartbreak, betrayal, the collapse of a marriage that once felt like destiny. But danger, real, deliberate danger, was something she'd never prepared for. "What does she want from me?" Riley whispered. "Not you," Adrian replied. "She wants him to suffer, and she believes hurting you will make that happen faster." Riley felt nausea twist through her. She didn't owe Landon her protection. She didn't owe him safety, comfort, support. Not after everything he did. But the twins, they were innocent. And she knew exactly how far pain could reach when it came wearing someone else's face. "Are you sure?" she asked. Adrian nodded. "I got a call late last night from one of my contacts. They intercepted conversations. Brooke is planning something big, something that could affect not just Landon, but the people he loves." Riley sank onto a bench, her knees suddenly weak. Images rushed through her mind, her children playing in the sun, their laughter echoing, their small hands holding hers. The thought of any threat touching them made her vision darken. Adrian sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I didn't want to scare you, but you deserve to know, and you deserve to be protected." "Why tell me before telling him?" Riley asked. "Because you won't dismiss it," Adrian said quietly. "He might, and if he does, the consequences will fall on all of you." She didn't want this. She didn't want to be pulled into Landon's storms again. She didn't want to navigate another mess created by the world he lived in, the choices he made, the people he attracted. But danger didn't ask permission. It simply arrived. "What do we do?" Riley whispered. "For now," Adrian said, "you stay alert, and you don't go anywhere alone, especially with the twins." Her heart twisted at the thought. She had worked so hard to build a life of gentle mornings and safe routines, and now danger was slipping through cracks she didn't even know existed. The day passed in a blur. Riley worked, but her mind kept circling the same questions. Why now? What was Brooke planning? How far would she go? Every time a door opened or a phone rang, she felt her body tense. By evening, she was exhausted. After putting the twins to bed, she sat in the dim light of her living room, staring at her silent phone, wondering if she should warn Landon, wondering if she should open old wounds for the sake of a man who once shattered her, wondering if choosing peace for herself meant turning away from a threat aimed at her children's father. She didn't make a decision. The decision came to her. Her phone buzzed. A new notification. No name. No profile picture. Just an unknown account. She opened the message. Her blood ran cold. "Enjoy your time with your little twins. Soon, he won't have any place in their lives at all." Her hands shook as she stared at the screen, dread settling like ice in her veins. Someone was watching, and they were not bluffing. A second message appears instantly. "You should choose your side before it's too late." Riley's hands were still trembling when the doorbell rang the next morning. She had spent the night replaying the unknown messages, her mind cycling through every possibility, every shadow, every danger. Sleep had been fragmented, haunted by thoughts she couldn't shake. The twins had sensed her tension, sleeping uneasily, murmuring questions in their dreams. When she opened the door, Landon stood there, arms full of groceries, a couple of small toy packages tucked under one arm, and a leather-bound notebook cradled against his chest. His presence hit her like a storm, familiar, heavy, and yet different. There was no arrogance in his posture today, no smug superiority, no polished perfection. He looked human, fragile, determined. "I know you don't trust me," he said, his voice calm but steady. "But I'm trying. The kids deserve more than my shame." Riley froze. Every word carried years of regret, pain, and yet a flicker of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel. The twins bolted from the couch the moment they saw him, their little arms wrapping around his legs. He knelt immediately, returning their embrace with a strength that belied his exhaustion. Riley's chest tightened. She had never seen him like this, stripped of ego, stripped of pride, simply present for his children. He held them a little longer than necessary, his own eyes glimmering with unshed tears. Noah buried his face in Landon's shoulder, and Riley saw the man she had once loved, and perhaps still loved, being undone by something pure and real. She stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her, feeling the weight of every emotion she had tried to bury. Landon looked up at her then, almost shyly, almost afraid, and offered a faint, hesitant smile. "I brought breakfast," he said, setting the groceries down carefully. "And I thought we could go over co-parenting schedules. Together." Riley studied him. There was no hidden motive, no performative charm, just him, attempting a role he had once failed to play, trying to be better for the children he had abandoned in spirit, if not in fact. The twins chattered endlessly, oblivious to the tension in the room, their excitement bouncing off every wall. Landon listened patiently, nodded, corrected gently when necessary, his voice calm and grounded. Every word he spoke carried accountability, a weight that had been missing from their interactions for years. Riley found herself silently acknowledging the effort. She didn't soften. She didn't forgive. But she noticed, and noticing was the first crack in the armor she had built around her heart. Later, Adrian arrived with dinner. He moved through the apartment with ease, laughing softly at the twins' stories, asking Riley thoughtful questions about her day. He didn't try to dominate the space. He didn't try to compete with Landon. He simply existed as a calm, supportive presence. Riley exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. With Adrian, there was no judgment, no history, no painful memories lurking behind every word. The twins laughed freely, running back and forth between the two men, and Riley noticed a softness settling over her shoulders. Landon, however, noticed something too, something sharp. Every time he saw Riley laugh with Adrian, every time the twins relaxed in Adrian's presence, a cold pang twisted in his chest. "He wants you," he muttered under his breath when Adrian stepped out to take a call. Riley heard it but chose not to respond. Instead, she simply sighed, running a hand over her face. "For once, Landon," she said softly, "this isn't about wanting. It's about respect." Landon's jaw tightened, the line of his mouth rigid. He wanted to argue, to claim, to justify. But he also knew she was right. His past failures had robbed him of the right to demand anything from her. Not trust, not loyalty, not love. The evening passed quietly, with the twins tucked into bed, and Riley sitting at the kitchen table, the echoes of laughter still lingering in her mind. The city outside was calm, the streets illuminated by streetlights, but the quiet felt heavy. The sense of threat still lingered, wrapping around her like a cold shroud. Suddenly, a sharp sound shattered the silence. Glass breaking. Riley spun toward the living room. The window had been smashed. Shards sparkled ominously on the floor, reflecting the streetlights in jagged patterns. Her heart leapt into her throat as she noticed a note wedged into the broken frame. She didn't move immediately, afraid that whoever had done this might still be outside, watching, waiting. The air seemed suddenly electric with danger. She stepped cautiously toward the note, heart pounding in rhythm with every thought screaming in her head. The twins were upstairs. Safe, she told herself, but the thought of Brooke, of someone targeting them, of Landon, of Adrian, the chaos she had been trying to avoid, all of it collided in a perfect storm of fear and fury. Riley picked up the note with trembling fingers. The handwriting was jagged, cruel, deliberate. She unfolded the paper, eyes scanning the words. If I can't have him, no one will. The room went silent around her. The message wasn't vague. It wasn't a warning to be ignored. It was a promise. And promises written in anger were the ones most likely to be kept. Her mind raced. What did Brooke want? What was she capable of? How far would she go to destroy them all? And why now, when Riley was finally beginning to feel some semblance of safety, some hope for a future she could almost touch? Riley's hands shook as she stared at the note. She felt a rising tide of panic, a pressure that made her chest tight, her breath shallow. For years, she had learned to survive heartbreak, humiliation, and loss. But danger, real danger, clawing at the edges of her carefully rebuilt life, that was new, that was frightening. The wind outside rattled the broken window, as if echoing the chaos in her mind. Every instinct screamed for her to act, to protect, to respond, to plan. Every thought circled back to Landon, Adrian, the twins, and the cruel game that Brooke had begun. Adrian would want her safe. He would advise caution, strategy, a measured response. But Landon would charge forward, driven by guilt, love, desperation. And Riley could already feel the storm forming between them, not just external but internal, between fear, anger, protectiveness, and old, unresolved emotions. She knew she couldn't ignore it, couldn't pretend Brooke's threats were empty, couldn't pretend her family was untouchable, and she knew that tonight would mark the beginning of choices, choices that would demand courage, clarity, and the strength to face a darkness she had only glimpsed before. Riley crouched, gathering the shards of glass, cradling the note as if it were a warning and a challenge wrapped in one. Her heart thumped, her mind raced, and in the back of her head a single thought repeated itself like a drumbeat. This isn't over. Brooke won't stop, and neither can I. A shadow moves across the street outside her shattered window, pausing as if watching, and a whispered voice carries faintly on the wind. I warned you. The first move is mine. The shrill wail of the fire alarm tore through the hotel's calm like a blade through silk. Riley bolted upright in bed, her pulse pounding in rhythm with the chaotic shrieks. Her hands were trembling before she even processed the smoke curling along the edges of the ceiling. Adrian's warning the night before echoed in her mind. He had insisted she, the twins, and Landon stay somewhere secure, somewhere monitored. But security could only do so much against a determined enemy. And Brooke was determined. Landon's door burst open before she could reach it. His face was pale, hair tousled, eyes sharper than the flames licking the hall outside. Riley, grab the kids, he shouted, urgency in every syllable. The twins stirred, coughing lightly as smoke crept under the crack of their room door. Riley swept them into her arms. Noah clutched her shoulder, and his small, frightened face pressed into her neck. Emma's hands gripped Riley's collar, tiny nails digging into fabric as she gasped in panic. Adrenaline coursed through Riley's veins. She barely registered Landon grabbing blankets and draping them over the children to protect them from the heat and smoke. Adrian appeared moments later, his face tense, his own lungs working against the smoke. He guided them, moving with a precision that only came from years of calculated risk. This way, he barked, leading them down the smoke-filled hallway. Riley's chest tightened. She kept glancing behind, expecting to see someone, anyone, emerging from the haze. but all she saw were shadows, the orange glow of fire reflected on the walls, the fear in the twins' eyes. Landon held the door open, forcing a calm she didn't feel into his voice. "Stay close. Don't let go of me or each other." The heat was becoming unbearable. Smoke thickened around them, clinging to skin, lungs, and hair. Riley's own breathing became ragged as she tried to maintain a clear head for the twins. Adrian took point, flashlight in hand, cutting through the smoke and guiding them with short, efficient commands. 2 steps at a time, keep low, move fast. Riley swallowed bile as she spotted the fire spreading through the hallway carpet, the flames inching toward the emergency exit. The roar of the fire mingled with the alarm, a deafening cacophony that threatened to overwhelm every sense. Landon's hand gripped hers for a brief second, grounding her. She realized in that heartbeat how much she had missed this, his presence, his protection, his frantic devotion. The twins cried softly, caught between fear and trust. Riley whispered to them, "We're okay. We're going to get out." Her voice cracked, but the reassurance was there. Adrian paused near a stairwell. "This way. Emergency stairs," he urged. He checked the floor for structural integrity before moving again. Riley followed, dragging the twins with her, Landon close behind. The fire's heat grew unbearable, singeing their hair, blistering their skin through the thin blankets. Riley's mind raced. Each step downward felt like a gamble. One wrong move, one misjudged step, and it could all end here. Smoke burned her throat. Tears welled, blurring her vision. Her fingers grazed the railing, each touch a lifeline, each sound a warning. Landon's eyes scanned the chaos with a mixture of fear and precision. "Keep moving. Don't stop," he barked. His tone left no room for argument, no room for hesitation. Adrian's flashlight caught something ahead. Movement, a figure at the end of the hallway. Riley squinted through the smoke, heart hammering. A smile, familiar, cruel. Brooke, standing in the hallway beyond the smoke, her silhouette framed by the fire's orange glow. She wasn't fleeing. She was watching. She was enjoying this. Riley's stomach twisted. "She's here," she gasped, voice raw. "Focus," Landon shouted. "We move, now!" The twins cried, coughing harder, panic rising. Riley wrapped them tighter, shielding their faces. The smoke burned her lungs, and every instinct screamed to run, to protect, to fight. But Brooke didn't move. She just smiled, watching, waiting, taunting. The same woman who had humiliated Riley once before, now turning terror into a weapon. Riley's mind raced, scanning every escape route. The fire alarm screamed, the smoke thickened, and the corridor narrowed with flames. Every second felt like eternity. Every breath was borrowed. Adrian shouted behind her, "Stay together. Keep moving. Don't let her distract you." Landon grabbed the twins, sprinting ahead, Riley close behind. But Brooke's presence burned into her vision, impossible to ignore. The woman had become more than a rival. She was a threat, a shadow intent on destruction, and she was already in position to strike again. Riley stumbled over a chunk of debris. Landon steadied her, dragging her forward. "Don't stop. Not now." The twins whimpered, coughing, their little bodies trembling. Riley whispered soothing words, praying they could make it out alive. Her heart felt like it was breaking, caught between fear, anger, and memories she had tried to bury. The fire roared behind them, smoke choking the stairwell. Every step downward was a test of endurance, every breath a fight against the suffocating air. Adrian led them to the bottom floor, the emergency exit finally in sight. The smell of smoke was overpowering. Riley gasped, tears streaming freely, the heat searing her skin through thin clothing. Landon shielded the twins, pulling them toward the door. Riley followed, gripping his arm, feeling every tremor of his fear and determination. But even as they reached the threshold, Her eyes darted back toward the hallway. Brooke's smile lingered in the smoke, as if promising this wasn't over. Riley's heart pounded. Every nerve screamed that the danger wasn't done, that Brooke wouldn't stop until she had taken everything, and maybe more. The twins clung to her, coughing, exhausted, but alive. Relief surged for a second, but it was laced with terror. They weren't safe yet, not while Brooke was out there. Adrian grabbed Riley's arm, pulling her out into the cool night air. Landon followed, carrying the last of the children's belongings, his face pale and drawn, eyes flicking back toward the burning corridor. Riley's hands shook uncontrollably, her chest heaving. She's here, she whispered, almost to herself. Landon didn't answer immediately. His jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the building, on the smoke, on the threat that Brooke represented. Rage, fear, guilt, and love all mixed together in a storm she could feel radiating off him. Adrian's voice cut through the chaos. "We need to move. She'll be back. Brooke doesn't stop, not ever." Riley nodded, clutching the twins. Her mind raced, planning, calculating. Brooke's reach was longer than they had imagined. Her patience, her cruelty, her obsession. It was all more dangerous than anything Riley had anticipated. The fire crackled behind them, orange and red reflected in the night sky. Smoke spiraled, a warning and a threat. Landon turned to Riley, voice low, trembling with fury and fear. "We protect them, no matter what. No matter who she is, no matter what it costs." Riley nodded, feeling the weight of every decision, every danger, every choice converging in this moment. The night was far from over. Brooke had made her move, and now the real battle was only beginning. Through the swirling smoke outside the hotel, Brooke's silhouette disappears briefly, then reappears atop a nearby rooftop, leaning over the edge, whispering into the night, "This is only the beginning. They will all pay." The night air was thick with smoke and the scent of burning wood, filling Riley's lungs with fire and fear as she sprinted toward the building. Every instinct screamed urgency, every heartbeat pounded like a drum in her chest. The sirens blared, lights flashed in red and blue, painting the chaos in surreal, urgent colors. She could hear the crackle of flames growing, each pop and snap a signal of danger, a countdown she didn't want to ignore. The twins clung to Landon, their small arms wrapped around him as if they knew instinctively he was the only shield between them and disaster. "Adrian," Riley screamed, her voice raw, cracking from panic. Her eyes darted through the smoke, straining to see him anywhere, to see any path of safety. But he was trapped behind a collapsing beam, the weight of it pinning him, his movements frantic, controlled, and desperate. Brooke's laughter sliced through the chaos. It was wild, unhinged, echoing off the walls like a nightmare made real. Riley froze at the sound, heart hammering. She had feared her old rival, but hearing her in person, here, now, it was worse than any imagination had prepared her for. "You ruined everything, Riley." Brooke's voice was raw with anguish and rage, carrying over the roar of the fire. "He was supposed to love me. He promised me a life." Riley's legs trembled. The words cut deeper than flames, sharper than smoke. But before she could respond, Landon stepped forward, his own body tense, his voice ringing out across the hall with a raw vulnerability he rarely exposed. "Brooke, stop!" Landon shouted, his arms instinctively holding the twins closer. "This isn't her fault. This is mine." Riley's breath caught. For the first time in years, Landon admitted it. Painfully, publicly, no excuses, no ego, just truth laid bare. Brooke's eyes widened in disbelief and fury, her body shaking as she advanced toward Riley. The firelight reflected in her wild gaze, making her seem both fragile and terrifying. Riley could feel the heat of the fire and the danger in Brooke's proximity. the two forces colliding with an intensity that made her chest constrict. Adrian's voice cut through the haze behind the collapsing beam. He forced the door open, energy and strength pouring into every movement, tackling Brooke just as she lunged. The struggle was chaotic, violent, but decisive. Firefighters stormed through the stairwell, their presence a mix of relief and urgency. They grabbed everyone, dragging Riley, Landon, Adrian, and the twins towards safety. Each step was frantic, each movement a negotiation with fear. Once outside, Riley inhaled the cold night air, her lungs burning, her mind racing. Brooke was cuffed, screaming, still wild-eyed, and the police led her away. The threat she had represented was contained, at least for now. But relief was short-lived. Landon collapsed in Riley's arms, his body trembling violently. Smoke inhalation had taken its toll. His arm bore burns from shielding the twins. His skin was pale, lips ashen, and the tremor in his body was raw, unprotected. Riley's heart fractured. She cupped his face in her hands, trembling herself. "Don't you dare leave again," she whispered, her voice raw with desperation, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Not like this. Not now." The twins clung to him, small fingers brushing his face, holding on to him with unshakable faith. Their wide eyes searched for answers, for safety, for reassurance, and Riley felt the weight of every choice she had ever made press down on her chest. Adrian hovered nearby, breathing hard, surveying the scene with a mixture of relief and calculation. He kept watch, knowing Brooke's reach might extend beyond these flames, that the danger might not be over. But he didn't interfere because Riley needed this moment, the raw, human, vulnerable connection between a father, his children, and the woman who had held the pieces of them together for years. Riley pressed her forehead against Landon's chest, inhaling the faint scent of smoke and his cologne, clinging to him as if that could anchor him to life. She whispered over and over, "Stay with me. You have to stay with me." The fire's glow reflected on their faces, flickering in rhythm with the sirens, the chaos, the adrenaline surging in their veins. The night was surreal, terrifying, and yet painfully intimate, a crucible in which raw truths were exposed. Landon's eyelids fluttered as consciousness wavered. He muttered through labored breaths, words barely audible. "Riley." Tears streamed freely as she pressed closer, brushing soot from his skin. Her heart caught. Every moment they had, lost, every word unspoken, every battle they had faced apart, converged in this fragile, trembling instant. The twins nestled into the space between them, small bodies shivering, their fear reflected in the adults surrounding them. Riley whispered to them, "We're safe now. We're safe." Landon's trembling hands reached for hers. His strength was fleeting, but his presence remained undeniable. His chest rose and fell, ragged, uneven, and yet alive. The firefighters continued their work around them, hoses spraying, orders shouted, but Riley's focus was singular, holding Landon, protecting the twins, anchoring herself in the only constants left in her chaotic life. Smoke and heat still clung to their clothes, their hair, their skin. But for the first time in what felt like years, Riley saw Landon exposed, honest, unguarded. His flaws, his failures, his love, his fear, all present in raw human form. Adrian stayed nearby, vigilant, but careful not to intrude. He had given Riley and Landon space for this crucial moment, knowing that trust, forgiveness, and survival often intertwined in moments of crisis. Landon coughed, choking slightly, and Riley brushed soot from his lips. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not leaving. Not ever." He opened his eyes slowly, the panic and fear fading to recognition, and then to something more. Vulnerability, regret, and longing all mingled in the deep blue of his gaze. The twins, sensing a shift, relaxed slightly, their hands finding his arms, their faces pressing into his chest. Riley felt a flicker of hope, fragile but undeniable, that maybe, just maybe, they could survive this together. Adrian finally exhaled, lowering his guard slightly. The immediate danger had passed, but the consequences, the revelations, and the emotions lingering in the night would echo far beyond the flames. Riley's hands remained on Landon's face. She felt the tremors in his body subside, felt life returning to the man she had once loved, the man who had made mistakes, the man who was now confronting every one of them with authenticity. His lips parted, a whisper carried through the chaos, fragile and raw, yet full of the weight of years lost. "Riley, I never stopped loving you." Riley freezes, heart hammering, as Landon's hand tightens around hers. The sirens fade slightly, but in the distance, a car engine roars. Brooke's voice cuts through the night, taunting and confident. "You think this is over. You're only beginning to understand what I can do." The hospital room was quiet, save for the soft beeping of monitors and the occasional shuffle of nurses outside. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and warmth, an odd mix that Riley had grown to associate with fragile safety. Landon lay in the bed, pale, bandaged, breathing shallow but steady. She sat beside him, one hand resting lightly on the blanket, covering his chest, unsure how to bridge the chasm of years, mistakes, and unspoken truths. The twins slept across the bed, heads nestled into his side, the rhythmic rise and fall of their breathing, a fragile counterpoint to the chaos that had brought them here. Adrian lingered near the doorway, hands clasped, expression tight but calm. He didn't intervene, didn't speak, just watched, understanding that some moments couldn't be forced, couldn't be rushed. They had all survived fire, fear, and betrayal. Now what remained was the delicate reconstruction of hearts. Landon stirred, eyelids fluttering as consciousness fully returned. His gaze found Riley's, weak yet intent, searching for her judgment, for her permission, for something he had no right to ask for. "I hurt you more than anyone ever should," he whispered, voice raw, laced with regret. "But Riley, I love you. I always did. I was just too selfish to see it." Riley's chest tightened, tears welling as she blinked rapidly. Words had failed her for years, left her raw and guarded. But now, hearing him confess in the quiet aftermath, with nothing but truth in his voice, she felt something shift. "Love isn't enough, Landon," she said, voice trembling. "Trust, that's what broke. Trust and your choices. That's what I can't fix overnight." He nodded, the weight of his acknowledgement settling over both of them. His hands twitched restlessly against the sheets, as though the simple act of staying still was a punishment. "I know," he admitted softly. "That's why I'm not asking for anything. Not a relationship, not forgiveness, just a chance to be better than the man who hurt you." Riley stared at him, taking in the vulnerability, the honesty, the desperation woven through every syllable. It was a fragile moment, poised between hope and fear, love and caution. Adrian stepped quietly into the room, catching Landon's last words. He paused, watching him differently now, not as the arrogant CEO, the estranged husband, the man who had shattered Riley's world, but as someone attempting to rebuild from his own ashes. Respect, tinged with caution, shone in Adrian's eyes. Riley felt the pressure of both men's presence, a subtle tug-of-war between past pain and future possibility. Adrian's calm, unwavering loyalty was a contrast to Landon's raw, unpolished sincerity. And in that tension, Riley realized she had never truly been free to consider what she wanted, only what others expected. Hours passed in quiet, punctuated by murmurs of conversation, the soft sighs of the twins, and the distant sounds of hospital life. Riley watched Landon sleep at intervals, noticing how fragile he looked, how human, how fallible. And yet, in that fragility, she glimpsed potential, the potential for growth. for love redefined, for redemption earned rather than demanded. Adrian returned later, quietly closing the door behind him. "I can give you peace, Riley," he said softly, eyes on hers. "A new life, a fresh start. But I know your heart isn't ready. I won't rush you." Riley swallowed, her throat tight. She had fought for survival, for respect, for her children's safety, for herself. Now she was fighting again, but the battle was internal, against desire, loyalty, memory, and fear. Tears spilled freely that night, sliding down her cheeks in silent confession. She cried for every hurt Landon had caused, every moment she had felt abandoned, every time she had wished for love and been denied. She cried for Adrian, who offered safety and stability without expectation. She cried for herself, for the years lost, for the children caught between these two men, and for the hope that somehow they could all survive this emotionally intact. The twins stirred in their sleep, murmuring names and dreams, and Riley held them close, her fingers threading through their hair, a lifeline tethering her to what truly mattered. She imagined the possibilities, a life in which she chose freely, a life in which love was measured by actions rather than words, a life in which mistakes were acknowledged but not wielded as weapons. The night stretched endlessly, each moment filled with the weight of unspoken truths, the fragility of recovery, and the hope that one day they could all find healing. Landon's arm twitched as he shifted in the bed, groaning softly. Riley brushed a hand across his forehead, careful, tentative, aware that every gesture mattered now. Adrian remained near the doorway, silently observing, a subtle reassurance that she was not alone in facing the aftermath of trauma, betrayal, and love intertwined with fear. Morning light filtered through the blinds, painting soft stripes across the room. The twins stirred, rubbing eyes, murmuring, stretching small limbs with innocence that felt sacred. Riley felt the tension between the two men in the room, the silent acknowledgement of what had been lost and what might yet be recovered. She held the twins in her lap, brushing their hair, listening to their quiet voices, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her like a mantle. Decisions loomed, but for now there was only this fragile peace, suspended between the chaos of the past and the uncertainty of the future. The room was silent except for the soft breaths of children and adults alike, each person processing trauma in their own way, each tethered to one another by love, fear, and the enduring hope of redemption. Riley's mind drifted over the events of the past weeks, the reunion, the fire, Brooke's obsession, Landon's confession, Adrian's steadfast presence. Each piece was a puzzle she was only beginning to understand, only beginning to place in the proper order. She realized with quiet clarity that forgiveness would take time, that trust would not return overnight, that love, even when genuine, demanded courage, patience, and vulnerability. Yet in that moment, holding her children, sitting beside Landon and feeling Adrian's unwavering support, Riley sensed a fragile hope blooming, one that promised survival, one that hinted at reconciliation, one that suggested life could be reclaimed from the wreckage. Her tears slowed, leaving her cheeks damp but her spirit steadier. She whispered soft words to the twins, brushing their hair, straightening blankets, assuring them with a calm she hadn't fully felt in years. Landon shifted again, murmuring her name in a weak, fragile tone, reminding Riley of the raw humanity beneath his mistakes, the man who loved, who feared, who sought redemption without entitlement. Adrian quietly excused himself to give them space, a subtle nod acknowledging the fragile moment unfolding. He understood that Riley needed to navigate this bridge between past pain and possible future on her own terms. The room fell into a serene, tense calm, punctuated by soft breathing, the distant sounds of hospital life, and the quiet heartbeat of two children nestled between the adults who loved them most. As the sun rose higher, Riley felt the weight of the hard truths around her. The danger they had survived, the choices she must make, the men she must consider, and the children whose lives depended on every decision. And then, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, the twins stirred fully awake, blinking up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Mom," Noah began, voice tentative, "can we stay here? With Dad, too?" Emma nodded, small hands gripping Riley's arm. "Please." Riley's chest tightened, her mind racing, heart aching. The question carried the weight of love, loyalty, and the impossible choices she would soon face. Riley looks between the twins, Landon, and the empty doorway where Adrian had stood. The hospital room feels smaller, heavier, electric with unspoken tension. She swallows hard, whispering to herself, "How do I choose when my heart wants both?" Weeks slipped by, each day a delicate stitch in the fragile tapestry of their lives. Brooke's arrest had made headlines, but it was fleeting. The media shifted quickly, chasing the next scandal, leaving Riley, Landon, and the twins to rebuild quietly. Public attention lingered only enough to remind them that survival was not about perception, but about love, trust, and safety. Landon's apology went viral, not polished PR, but raw, unfiltered truth. He admitted every mistake, every selfish choice, every moment of pride that had cost him the family he now vowed to earn back. Comments flooded in, some condemning, some supportive, but most were stunned into silence by the honesty. He was vulnerable, and vulnerability resonated with people who had seen the consequences of ego. Riley found a rhythm in the chaos, balancing work, the twins, and visits with Landon. Adrian remained a constant, protective, but never imposing, allowing Riley to navigate her emotions on her own terms. His presence was steady, like a lighthouse in a storm, always there, guiding but never forcing her hand. One afternoon, she finally returned to Landon's home. The house was quiet, eerily so, stripped of ostentation, of ego, of the reminders of the man he had been before fire and betrayal had laid him bare. The luxury was still present but muted, replaced by warmth and light. His office had been transformed into a children's art room. Riley's eyes swept over framed sketches, watercolors, crayon drawings. The twins' worlds preserved in vibrant color. The room smelled faintly of crayons, paint, and the subtle scent of home. Landon stood near the window, light catching his blue eyes in a way that made him look both older and more vulnerable. His voice shook as he spoke. "You don't owe me anything," he said softly, every word deliberate. "But if you ever choose to give us another chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve it." Riley's chest tightened. Her heart softened, not from pity or because he begged, but because change radiated from him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the quiet strength of someone who had confronted his flaws, faced the consequences, and chosen to become better. Adrian approached later, gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Choose the life that gives you peace, Riley," he said quietly. "I'll support whatever you decide." His gaze was firm but understanding, acknowledging her right to decide without pressure. Riley nodded, tears threatening, and embraced him. Gratitude filled her, for his patience, for his integrity, for loving her without demanding anything in return. Yet, deep inside, her heart already knew the answer she would give. Evening arrived, gold and soft, casting long shadows across the quiet street. Riley walked back to Landon's house, the twins running ahead, their laughter echoing, carrying the joy and innocence that had been the reason she fought through every danger, every heartbreak. "Dad!" they shouted in unison, voices bright with excitement. They barreled toward him, small bodies colliding with his legs in uncontainable glee. Landon stood frozen for a moment, stunned, overwhelmed by the magnitude of seeing his children safe, alive, laughing, and filled with love he had once taken for granted. His chest rose and fell, and tears pricked the corners of his eyes. Riley approached slowly, every step a careful measure of courage and vulnerability. She met his gaze, and the softness there mirrored her own. "I'm not promising the future yet," she whispered, voice trembling but steady. "But let's start living in the same direction, together." His lips parted, a mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and relief flooding his expression. Every muscle in his body seemed to release tension held for years, years of shame, regret, and longing. Landon stepped forward, enveloping her in his arms with gentle care, his hands cradling her as though she were the most precious thing he had ever held. She didn't resist. Instead, she leaned in, letting the warmth, the security, and the honesty of the moment wash over her. The twins squealed with delight, bounding around them, holding hands, wrapping their small arms around both parents, their laughter a salve for every wound the past had inflicted. Riley felt the past's weight, every betrayal, every abandonment, every sleepless night of worry, start to lift. It didn't vanish completely, but it became manageable, a shadow behind the bright, radiant possibility of now. Landon whispered against her hair, voice raw and trembling. "I will never hurt you like that again. I swear it. I'll spend every day earning your trust, earning your love, earning our family." Riley drew in a deep breath, feeling the ache of years past, the joy of the present, and the cautious hope for the future. She knew forgiveness was not instant, trust not rebuilt overnight, but the willingness to try, the commitment to change, and the shared love they held for the twins formed a foundation strong enough to begin again. Adrian, watching from the doorway, smiled faintly. He understood that Riley had made her choice, not out of convenience, not out of fear, but out of clarity, hope, and the desire to build a life anchored in honesty. The evening deepened, stars appearing one by one, as if blessing the scene unfolding below. Landon, Riley, and the twins sat together on the living room floor, drawing, laughing, sharing stories, holding one another close. The past had shattered them. Pain had left its mark on every corner of their hearts, but love had rebuilt slowly. Not perfectly, not without scars, but honestly, deeply, unbreakably. The twins' laughter rang out, mingling with Riley's soft voice and Landon's tentative chuckles. Each sound was a note in a new melody, one composed of forgiveness, courage, and the raw, unfiltered beauty of human connection. Landon's hands rested lightly on Riley's shoulders, grounding her. She leaned into him, letting herself be held, letting herself feel. The warmth of family, of reunion, of redemption, filled the space completely. Adrian left quietly, knowing his presence was no longer required. He had played his part, supporting, protecting, loving without demanding. His role had been vital, but the story now belonged to Riley, Landon, and the twins. Riley glanced at Landon, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She didn't speak, didn't need words. The promise was implicit. Love, respect, honesty, and a shared commitment to the family they had created together. The evening stretched into night, the house glowing softly with lamps and laughter, the scent of home filling every room. The twins, finally tired, curled up with blankets around them, their faces peaceful, their hearts safe. Landon held Riley's hand, squeezing gently, grounding them both in the present, in this fragile, perfect moment of healing and connection. Riley rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth, the vulnerability, and the honesty of the man beside her. She whispered softly, "We'll take it one day at a time, together." Landon nodded, voice husky, filled with relief and reverence. "Together," he repeated, sealing the promise between them without need for ceremony or grand gestures. The house, once a place of isolation and ego, now resonated with life, with laughter, with hope. Every corner reflected their journey, the dangers survived, the mistakes confronted, the love reclaimed. The past would remain, but it would no longer dictate the future. Every scar, every memory, every lesson had led them here, to a beginning forged from fire, fear, and forgiveness. Riley watched Landon with a tender intensity, knowing she had made the right choice. Not the easy choice, not the safe choice, but the choice of her heart. The twins snuggled between them, sleepy smiles on their faces, and Riley felt the full weight of gratitude and love press into her chest. For the first time in years, she felt whole. Not perfect, not without challenges, but whole. The family was reunited, the father redeemed, the mother healed. And as they sat together, hands intertwined, hearts aligned, Riley allowed herself to imagine a future not built on fear or betrayal, but on trust, resilience, and the quiet, unshakable strength of love reclaimed. The night carried on, silent, calm, hopeful. The fire of past pain had been extinguished, replaced by warmth, laughter, and the tangible promise of a life rebuilt together. For Riley, for Landon, for the twins, the story had reached a satisfying, tear-filled, hopeful conclusion. A soft knock at the door interrupts their quiet night. Riley opens it to find a letter slipped through the mail slot. No return address. She opens it slowly, heart pounding. Inside, the single line reads, "This isn't over. I know where your family will be next." The glow of the lamps flickers across her wide eyes, and Landon's hand tightens around hers.